Cardinal Tagle gives a public emotional speech. After losing the papacy, remember when millions of Catholics across Asia and beyond dared to dream that for the first time in centuries, the papacy might rest in the hands of an Asian cardinal. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of inclusion, humility, and spiritual authenticity. As smoke rose from the Sign Chapel in 2025, many hearts raced. The prayers of Filipino faithful and global admirers surged toward one question: could it finally be him? But it wasn't. The white smoke signaled the election of Cardinal Robert Francis, Provost, now Pope Leo I XIV. And in that moment an emotional vacuum formed. Where was Cardinal Tagle? Would he address the faithful who cried not with joy but with quiet grief? The almost Pope. How close? Antonio Tagle came to the papacy in 2025. The air was thick with hope, speculation, and legacy. For many Filipinos and millions more worldwide, that hope carried one name: Luis Antonio Tagle. For a few hours, it felt as if the world might witness something revolutionary, the rise of the first modern Asian pope. But in the end, history took a different the 2025 conclave, a global turning point. The 2025 papal conclave wasn't just any gathering. It was described as one of the most wide open in history. The death of Pope Francis, the Church stood at a critical crossroads. Total of 133 cardinal electors entered the Sign Chapel to make one of the most consequential decisions in modern Catholicism. Across the Philippines, vigils were held. Social media lit up with prayers and praise. The Catholic faithful, not just in Asia, but also in Africa and Latin America, saw Tagle as their hope for a church more grounded in humility and mercy. His credentials were undeniable. Everything seemed aligned. But then came the white smoke, and it different. When the white smoke finally billowed above the Sistine Chapel, was a sign the conclave had made its. The world leaned in. The hushed silence followed. The announcement came: Habemus Papam, Cardinal Robert Francis. Post will be Pope Leo I XIV. It wasn't Tagle. For millions, especially in the Philippines, the news brought a mix of joy and heartbreak. While the faithful welcomed the new pope with reverence, a deep what lingered. Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out. How close did Tagle really get the truth beneath that silence? Here's where the mystery deepens and where emotions run highest. The conclave's voting process is cloaked in total secrecy. No one outside those walls truly knows the final tallies. Did Tagle come in second? Did he lead in early ballots? Was he just a few votes away from making history? The media called him a frontrunner. Analysts placed him in the top 3. Insiders whispered that the early momentum might have swung his way. But without concrete numbers, the world is left with only one truth. Tagle was among those closest to the papacy. Yet the margin between dream and reality remains unknown. Major outlets from Reuters to CNN, Euronews to NBC all framed Tagle as a top-tier contender. They described the conclave as a wide-open race with no dominant candidate. Tagle was consistently named alongside Paraline and Erdo, with live updates often tracking his movements, meetings, and perceived influence. This wasn't a fluke or fantasy. The world saw Tagle's name and expected greatness. He is the face of a new. One Vatican analyst said, a man whose time may not have come yet. If you see yourself as a believer in global change, then Tagle's story is for. Tagle's journey isn't over. In fact, for many, this moment has only elevated his voice. The narrative of man passed over at the peak of possibility yet continuing to serve with joy is one that resonates deeply in a world hungry for integrity. If you value humility over ambition, action over title, and service over spectacle, then Cardinal Tagle remains your North Star. The fact that he didn't become Pope doesn't weaken his legacy, it strengthens it. The election of Pope Leo the 14th signaled continuity, perhaps a more administrative focus over reformist zeal. But that doesn't negate the powerful signal that Tagle's candidacy sent, that the global South is rising, that voices like Tagle's cannot be ignored, that charisma and compassion still matter. While the world didn't get the first Asian Pope in 2025, it came breathtakingly close. And that nearness has transformed Tagle into something even more powerful, a symbol of the Church's evolving future. Meet the man who is Robert Pfost, now Pope Leo XIV. You might not have known his name before today, but Robert Pfost's story is quietly extraordinary. Born in Chicago, 1955, he is the kind of leader whose life speaks louder than any spotlight. Ordained in 1982, he became a member of the Order of St. Augustine, a religious community known for its emphasis on community, contemplation and learning. But it wasn't just books and silence for Pfost. He spent decades working in Peru, ministering to the marginalized and leading with compassion. He wasn't just another American bishop climbing the Vatican ladder. He was a missionary, servant leader, and eventually the prefect of the dicastery for bishops, a role that gave him massive influence in shaping the global church's leadership. Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out. It wasn't an easy road. While many cardinals enjoy lifelong prominence in Rome, Prevost spent years in the trenches quietly making a difference in Latin America. His dual identity as both a U.S. citizen and Peruvian resident made him a global figure, but not one without controversy. Some traditionalists questioned his modern pastoral style. Others wondered if an American pope could really lead a church, often suspicious of U.S. influence. But it turns out these challenges were his training. They shaped him into a bridge builder, someone who could speak to North and South, rich and poor, conservative and progressive. And that's precisely the kind of pope the cardinals decided the world needs. Even experts agree this is the real deal. It's not just Catholics who are buzzing. Headlines across CNN, Forbes, and major global outlets confirm the magnitude of this moment. Religious scholars call it a stunning affirmation of the Church's global. Prominent bishops from Asia and Europe have already voiced support, calling Pope Leo the 14th a man of depth and vision. Even those who supported other candidates like Cardinal Tagle or Cardinal Sarah are now lining up behind him, acknowledging his reputation as a fair, discerning, and humble leader. Let's be real, Catholicism is facing major challenges, from declining church attendance in Europe and the Americas to the sex abuse crisis to theological polarization. The next pope needed more than charisma. He needed clarity, credibility, and courage. Post brings all three. He's not flashy. He doesn't seek media fame, but what he has is even more powerful moral authority rooted in humility. That's what helped him rise above the noise in the conclave. The deep prayerful presence made cardinals see not just an American but a shepherd for the universal. Ask yourself, do you want a church that looks backward or one that embraces the challenges of the future without losing its soul? Do you long for leadership that doesn't just talk about change but embodies it in action? Pope Leo I May 14th already be winning your heart. He represents a church that remembers its roots but dares to dream forward. A church that speaks English, Spanish, Tagalog, Swahili, and Latin, because it speaks love. And now with an American Pope at its helm, it dares to believe that geography does not define holiness. We have a Pope and he's one of. Imagine the scene. Americans watching the live broadcast from the Vatican, tears welling up as they hear her papum. Filipino Catholics stunned that Tagle was passed over. Watching closely to see how this new Pope will carry the torch. Latin Americans remembering Pvost's quiet service among their poor and Catholics around the world holding their breath, wondering what now. Pope Leo I 14th has not just broken a mold. He's begun a new chapter. For the first time, the papacy belongs to America and to the world in a whole new way. If you've ever been overlooked despite doing everything right, if you've stood tall while people questioned your values, if you've chosen humility over vengeance, then yes, you see yourself in Cardinal Tagle. And this story resonates with you, not just because it's about the church, but because it's about you, about how people like us face criticism for being compassionate, about how sometimes in trying to build bridges, we're painted as weak. But the truth, bridge builders are the real warriors. So, was Cardinal Tagle betrayed? Not by those who voted, not by his peers. But yes, he was misrepresented, smeared, and used as a rhetorical target by those afraid of change. But he didn't lash out. It didn't withdraw. And he certainly didn't betray the church, his calling, or his. Instead, he showed what real courage looks like. Staying true to who you are when the world wants to paint you otherwise. You've seen the journey, the hope, the pain, the distortion, the truth. Now carry it with you. Because if you believe in compassion, in integrity, in a church that listens and embraces, then you believe in the same things Cardinal Tagle stands for.